This is the Amazing Education Podcast. Powered by the Ames Community School District, I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we are joined by Ames High senior Vijay Williams. We're going to have an amazing conversation about social justice, what social media platforms high school students are using, and his storytelling aspirations. Vijay Williams, thank you for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, man. You are almost through your senior year of high school.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're closing in. It's, wow. Some of the teachers are letting us out early, so it's like, wow, we're getting through this quicker than I thought.
Has it gotten to the point where, some were like, we've done all we can with you. You're a senior, you've done it all.
Really?
This has been a tough year for seniors. Now that, it's nicer outside, I think that always provides, at least for me, an opportunity to kind of take a deep breath and reflect. Summer's almost here. How has the year been going, though?
As far as the year for me, it started off kind of rocky.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, questioning, don't know, are we ever going to go back into this building again?
Yeah.
And then when we did, it was like, all right, are we ever going to have normal schedules again?
Yeah.
And then that happened, and it was like, all right, we're kind of in it, and now it's almost over. So really, It's been a really weird road just to get here right now.
I think one of the things that I want for us to talk about, we got a list of things, and we added more just before we started recording, but I think one of the really cool things about high school, and I can only speak really to Ames High, is the cool thing about high school, especially when you get to your senior year, is that you really get an opportunity to start to dig into topics on a deeper level. And really in high school, you can go any number of directions with those topics, and one of them for you has been being involved in Sacre. Do you want to talk a little bit about what Sacre stands for and kind of some of the work that you've been doing, not just this year, but the last couple years?
So Sacre stands for Students Advocating for Civil Rights in Education, and it's like the biggest club at Ames High School. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to meet as much this year, but it's been going for the past, my whole entire career in high school. Yeah. When I first came here, it was here getting started, and I've been making sure that it continues.
So how did you get involved, just thinking, several years back, how did you get involved, and then how did you kind of, move into sort of the position that you're in now with it?
So actually, prior to Sacre, I was already working with a different social justice group. At the time, we were just called YPAR, which just stands for Youth Participatory Action Research. So we just named ourselves what the whole entire purpose of it was. It wasn't that smart of a branding deal. But then eventually, the Sacre leaders, the people that came together and formed Sacre, ended up joining YPAR as we came into the high school. Because we started out in middle school and eventually came up to the high school level. And so we were like, all right, let's get more high schoolers. And those guys were juniors or seniors at the time. Okay. So when they joined, they were like, we really like what you guys are doing here, and we really want to try to get that out to other students, that even students that weren't necessarily of color. Because YPAR was specifically for students of color being able to research different problems that were going on within our school district and trying to solve them and present those solutions to the school. And so it then became Sacre's purpose to basically educate students and teachers alike, and kind of take some of the research ideas that we had for YPAR, but really make that super accessible for everyone and just really make that discussion based, so it's a super cool learning process.
Yeah. So give me some examples. What type of things are you talking about and discussing, and then even presenting to maybe teachers or school administrators? Kind of walk me through and give me some examples of that.
Yeah. As far as a Sacre meeting would go, we all come in, maybe we'll have some music, and then we'll just be like, all right, here's today's topic. It may be something that we saw in the news recently or something that's trending or popular at the time. For example, I remember one of the first Sacre meetings that I went to before I was even co-leader was we were talking about cultural appropriation and like Post Malone and his different music and stylings and how it's taking hip hop and we're talking about, is that cultural appropriation? Is it not? We basically came to the consensus, yeah, it basically is. He makes good music though, but like, yeah, you have to come to terms with that and see how people react to that. And everyone gave like a back and forth about, is this a good thing, is this a bad thing? And it definitely is bad. We need to we realize that we need everyone to strive for cultural appreciation instead of the appropriation parts. But
so what's the difference there?
The difference between cultural appropriation and appreciation is like cultural appropriation has been going on for like centuries, basically. People see what other races will be doing, be like, they'll put us down for that, but then they'll pick it up themselves. For example, like different hairstyles, like my own hairstyle.
Yep.
You'll see people, especially in like slave times, would put us down for that, call us nappy-headed and stuff.
Okay.
And then eventually, now you have like Kardashians ending up doing their hair in braids and stuff like that, and that's just cultural appropriation. Appreciation is basically if you're just building people up the whole entire time, and you're you can embrace that culture without necessarily stepping on anyone's toes in order to do that.
Yeah. So I mean, you said you get some of these topics, like from the news, current events.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been short of those topics over this past year. Have some of those topics come into the high school?
They've definitely come into the high school, and it's really had an effect on like other different clubs and how they operate. And as far as like talking about them, I know the school like sent out like different surveys and stuff because they want like us to be able to feel comfortable, and they want to know like how we feel going forward about different stuff.
Yeah.
And so it obviously is a very thought-provoking thing.
Yeah.
And people want to talk about it. It's kind of difficult to talk that in a soccer level because it's not so much like a civil rights like issue, and there are some people that try to make it like that, but yeah, it's...
So what topic are you referring to right now?
Right now I'm talking about like
or just thinking
COVID.
about...
I'm talking about COVID right now, like
okay.
thinking about it and like how that affects people. And it can definitely go into like civil rights, but really as far as soccer like goes, talking about it, it's like, yeah.
Well, you had a pretty cool experience if you want to talk about BEAR, bringing awareness to racism in education. Talk me through, you have a lot of acronyms, man. You're working in a lot of acronyms.
Yeah, sometimes I get them confused. Yeah, it's...
but talk me through what BEAR is, but then also like the opportunities that you've had.
So, yeah, outside of soccer, and this kind of goes back into what YPAR was, eventually we kind of like evolved like a Pokemon with YPAR and ended up turning that into something new called BEAR. We were like, all right, we got our own brand now. We're going to do this thing called bringing awareness to racism and education. And we ended up branching out because in YPAR we already did like smaller meetings here and there in Ames talking to teachers, but then we were like, all right, we can further branch out and do like more of our own bigger like research topics that we really wanted to hone in and focus on. And eventually that really got going where we were learning more about how systematic racism works, and we ended up wanting to really present that to different people, and we ended up getting like a lot of connections out of state even, and like Denver, Colorado, and Minneapolis and Minnesota and stuff. So
do you feel like just through this process, whether it be through, Sacre or BEAR, and, as you're continuing to learn and you're continuing to talk with people about social justice issues, do you feel like people are listening? Do you feel like, you're making an impact, and I'll just say at Ames High?
I feel like it's definitely an impact. Like even like with the minimum like amount of soccer meetings that we did have this year, and it's like a really small minimum, I still have like people that will contact me talking about it or presenting new ideas for us to do with it. Like recently I had a student be like, we should make like a soccer like podcast, and I was like, that is a great idea, I really want to do that, which
now
is why
I
was like really like excited about doing this podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely has an impact, and you definitely see how people like change their perspectives on different things will change, like especially when you've been with these people since like middle school,
yeah,
and you really start to see them grow both like physically and intellectually.
Yeah.
And even like as teachers, like you see them become like more open-minded and they become more alert. Like I feel like Sakura and even like our work in YPAR and Bear like has driven a lot of change for the Ames Community School District. Like now we have like the director of equity like right next door as Dr. Jones.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of feel like we had like a major part in like getting that happen because we were awakening people to these issues.
I can 100% say that the community made that happen.
Yeah.
And you know, so I'm taking this approach from a different lens, but I know just working with Dr. Jones, we've had him on this podcast actually a couple different times to talk about what we're doing as far as equity work, but also social justice. We recapped the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, so we talked about that on the podcast as well. And having gone through a lot of the trainings and equity, but then ultimately just having conversations, it's personally opened my eyes and changed the way that I think as well. Have you had any, I know you kind of alluded to it, but have you had any like aha moments with either like friends or teachers? You don't have to name names, but any that like really stick with you?
I mean, we'll have conversations, like especially last year before like COVID or anything happened in junior year. We had like conversations around the lunch table, and like eventually you'll get like some things thrown in there that are like maybe political or just like race related, which is completely separate from politics anyway, but just wanted to point that out there. But like and you'll start talking about that and you'll be like, wow, I didn't even realize like my friends were, not to put them down, but like we're capable of having this kind of discussion. But like it's cool to know that we could have that discussion.
Yeah.
And then from that you can lead to like actual productive like thinking and talking that can really change you as a person. So I've had a couple of those aha moments like that.
You know, I wouldn't say like, I'm going to say the word intimidating. I don't know that I mean it that way, but has it been, I guess, intimidating to initiate some of these conversations like with some of your friends? Or maybe even to not call people out, but just to like raise awareness around it?
Yeah, it definitely was intimidating at the start, but like every time it gets easier, and eventually you don't really go out seeking these things. And a major part of like our YPAR work was we're not trying to call anyone out. Rather, we're trying to call people in so we have like a comfortable, like real conversation that isn't super aggressive. We just want everyone to grow from this experience. And so with that intimidation factor really just fades away really quickly.
Yeah.
And you're just able to just get straight to the point and be able to change people's lives, really.
Well, I really appreciate that approach, and I can't reinforce how much I appreciate that approach, because I feel like particularly over the last maybe year or two, anytime you bring up like a social justice conversation with the intent of what you just said, like, hey, let's have a conversation, let's bring people in, let's educate people, suddenly it turns political, and then suddenly you have to pick a side, and if you're on the wrong side, and it turns into a disaster. But let's just have a conversation. Let's just talk.
Just cool it down.
Right.
Just chill. Sometimes we even sing prior.
Dude, do you? Well, so you had referenced that, during COVID, you couldn't have some of like the Sakura meetings, but you turned to social media some to do that. So what does that look like?
So as far as that looks like, sometimes I'll take different things that I've been learning about or already have been like a major part of my life, and I'll just like start using our Instagram in order to start talking about it. For example, we were talking about like the African American holiday of like Kwanzaa, which basically just celebrates what it means to be like African American in the United States.
Yeah.
And it was eye opening for like a lot of people. I had people that were talking to me being like, wow, I've never like heard of like this before, or I've always wanted to be a part of Kwanzaa but never knew how to like really learn about it. And so we were just being able to learn myself and then put my learnings out there in order for other people to learn. It's just like an amazing thing.
You really like doing that though, don't you?
Yeah, it's fun to just help people.
But you also presented at and Ames High led, was it a Black Lives Matter week?
During Black Lives Matter week. Honestly, I almost forgot about that. It feels like a century ago. But I presented on like African American victories. And I did 2 of those sessions, and I was just talking about, all right, I've been learning a lot about different things that African Americans like me have been doing that are like amazing as far as different things like music and the whole entire entertainment industry, which sadly is how like a lot of people just see African Americans as. But then I expanded like, no, we're also like in STEM. Like we did major stuff for science that you wouldn't even think of. For example, you have like people like Henrietta Lacks that people don't really know about, giving like a lot to like cell research and stuff like that. So it was an eye-opening experience again, like just like the last thing for both me and other people, and I feel like we truly like grew from that.
What kind of response did you get?
I mean, I was presenting to other high schoolers, and it was during a time where you could tell some people don't want to be there, some people are just here just to have something to go to, and some people are just here like, hey, I'm actually interested in this, and I know Vijay, and I know he's gonna like do a good job of this, and so it was kind of funny to see all those different people, and you could honestly always tell who's thinking what when you just look right at them about it while you're talking about some old school African American guy who made like millions back in the early 1900s. But yeah, it was an experience.
But you're a creative person, right? I mean, you're a creative person. You're a storyteller.
Yeah, majorly.
I tell you, I mean, and I like to think that I am as well. Sometimes you just do projects because you just want to do them. Yeah. Like, it's tons of fun. I'm going to do it for me, and then hopefully other people appreciate it. But I've always found too, and you'll probably find this with these projects that you're working on, is I always find ways to repurpose them. So I may do a project for this particular day or this presentation, but you do so much research and you develop the content so much that I oftentimes use it for a ton of other things as well. So I mean, I could see you doing that.
Yeah.
So I need you to educate us a little bit, myself included. You know, we alluded to you using social media. What platforms are teenagers using these days? High school students, like, what are you on? How are you talking to each other?
Thing. There's so many different platforms that I'm not even on all of them, and I don't care for all of them.
All right.
For example, TikTok is a major one now, and I'm like, I don't care about TikTok. I'm sorry. I've never used it, and I don't want to have it.
So you're not going to be able to educate me on that, because I don't get TikTok.
I understand TikTok, and I've seen how it works. It's basically just the algorithm of just videos that people might like that are either funny or educational, sometimes a little bit of both, and you're just scrolling, and it's the algorithm that just sucks you in, you'll just keep scrolling if you don't have anything else to do. I'm like, I already have YouTube for that. I don't need social media where I can talk to people or something like that.
But tons of high schoolers are on TikTok.
Tons. It's crazy. And we have like so many trends get started because of TikTok, and everyone starts, you guys know this TikTok dance? And I'm like, no. But it's an experience. It's really changed how we interact with each other.
You know, so I need you to keep educating me, but I end up in these conversations because I'll be honest with you, I'm not like a huge personal social media person. Yeah. Like, I'm on Twitter, I'll share some things. I'm on Facebook, but I don't share anything on there. And so as a school district, you know, we operate Facebook for parents. I mean, parents are on Facebook. You know this. We do Twitter because it's one of the big 3, but that's where you can kind of get quick hits of information. Yeah. And then Instagram, you guys live on that, I think, still.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
My major platforms are Instagram and Twitter. I have a Facebook. I don't use it. My mom's like, I tagged you on something on Facebook. I'm like, I don't check my Facebook. I'm sorry, I don't. But yeah, as far as Instagram goes, it's like you can just get a little dosage of someone else's life, bring a little joy to your own face, or put yourself out there being like, hey, this is something cool I'm doing. And then you can even talk to people through that too. Or just look at memes, which is how I use a lot of Instagram. You just get a lot of memes. And memes is like a huge part of like our culture right now.
Yeah.
It's been around for like decades. Surprisingly, in like a bear meeting that we were doing, we were talking about how memes really started with like calendar cats and how people would just be like, hey, look at this cute calendar with these cats on it. And eventually that's what memes have become.
Okay.
And then we shifted it into like putting different words and different like funny jokes into them. And now if you look at a meme, you'll probably have to see like 20 more memes in order to understand that meme. It's become a whole entire
I don't get that
beast.
deep. You know, sometimes, you know, the memes, they trickle out and then they enter into the world in which I live in. And so I see some of them, but I wasn't aware of that complexity of it all.
Yeah. And as for Twitter goes, like I'm in a love-hate relationship with Twitter because like you just see everyone's views on there. Even sometimes when you're not even following someone, you're like, how did you get into my Twitter timeline? I don't understand. But you can have like interesting conversations that again can just like build people up, or it can put you down if you're like really risky about it. But you can also, I kind of use Twitter for like the news, which is kind of a bad thing, but it's also like a lot more current than the normal news because it's a lot more community based, a lot more just people being like, this just happened, let's talk about it. And you'll be like, wow, I never thought about this. Like, especially a lot of stuff that's going on now with, like, Palestine and stuff. Like, I really don't even understand, like, completely that, but, like, I get to learn all kinds of different perspectives and stuff. So.
Well, I've actually, I've started to learn to use Twitter to find information because you'll kind of hear that something happened, you know, whether it's pop culture related or, you know, more serious news related, and you can't really find like a really great news article about it, so you just start searching Twitter, and you can find all sorts of stuff. Now, whether some of that's true or not, I don't know. But
and I love how Twitter's actually gotten kind of better at being like verifying, all right, if this is factual or not. And they'll like start telling you this is, if you send something on a trending list, and it'll just be like, let's say Barney the dinosaur or something, it'll tell you, here's why Barney the dinosaur is trending. It's not for anything you think. It's nothing bad. But,
you know, and I'm probably, you know, suspect of this as well, but going back to a comment that you had said before as far as just being able to have conversations and having that attitude, something happens when you go from high school and then sometimes when you get to an adult age, you become angry about things. And I really consciously try not to be angry about things. But something happens, and because adults live on Facebook, like, people feel like they just need to comment about things like in an angry way. And it's something that I don't see a ton of on Twitter. Maybe it exists on Instagram. It's just the people who are following the Ames Community School District, there aren't, you know, some of them are your age, but some of them are not. I don't know. It's social media. It confuses me sometimes.
Yeah, it's confusing, scary, different place. It's just different.
So what else is hot? You said, I mean, I feel like I have at least a pulse on some of these. TikTok, not so much, but what else is hot?
What else? I mean, YouTube's here. It's always been here.
Yeah, it's not going away.
It's not. It's
I do
changing.
dig YouTube.
I do too. I've really been planning different stuff because I want to get into YouTube.
Yeah.
You can get like information out. You can have fun on there.
Yeah.
I don't like how it's kind of becoming super ad based, and like that's how YouTubers make money. But it's like, wow, we're really doubling down. Like I remember just last year they put in like, we're doing double ads now, and I'm like, double ads? Double unskippable ads?
Yeah,
YouTube?
right?
Okay, I guess.
I can't wait for that first 5 seconds to be over. Like the number of times I get Grammarly ads, it's man. I mean, like just nonstop. Like every video, it's like, I already have Grammarly. Like, stop.
Yeah. As far as like other platforms, I don't even know. It's like I said, there's so many, it's hard to keep them all straight.
Yeah. So, talking about, you know, storytelling and being a creative person, I'm excited to talk about what your future holds. So you're going to enter the ranks of being an Ames High alum here in a couple weeks, and then what's next for you?
So what's next for me, I'm going to be going to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. Probably going to be doing online classes, but I'll be studying in their cinema, television, and emerging media studies. And basically I'm doing that in order just to cater towards my filmmaking side.
Yeah.
So I want to become like a director and a screenwriter. And I've already been like writing all kinds of different like screenplays and like for all kinds of different things. My own little passion projects or like my own different ideas. Like I want to make Marvel movies at some point.
Yeah.
I want to make something for Marvel. That'd be
Yeah.
cool. So I've been like, here's some ideas I have down for this.
Yep.
So
Well, Marvel, now owned by Disney. I
Yep.
mean, they're notorious for hiring directors who they have one great indie movie,
Yep.
and then suddenly they're given a $200 million budget.
I love that about them.
I know.
It's like they're really free reign about that. I love everything that like their producer Kevin Feige's doing.
Yeah.
Who's just amazing at just finding great people. And then especially when you see like a Marvel movie, you're like, I like this director and I like this style, and let me go back and see what they made.
Right.
Like that's how I got into Ryan Coogler's
Yep.
films. I was like, oh wow, this guy made like Fruitvale Station
Yeah.
and like the Creed movies, and
Yep.
like, wow, now I'm in love with like this man.
I know everything he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have such an infrastructure in place. So I read about the film industry actually a lot. It's an interest area of mine. So I actually regret that we haven't connected like years ago, actually, just to be able to talk more about this and collaborate on things. But it is they have such a structure in place that they can take somebody with a storytelling vision and they can surround them with people who know all the technical stuff. Just because all of those visual effects, I mean, they're just off the charts. But they have people who are off the charts on doing that stuff. And so like they need that director with that vision and to be able to storytell. And that's what Ryan Coogler is. I mean, he's ridiculous storyteller.
Yeah, amazing. That's why I'm really excited for like Black Panther 2,
I know.
Wakanda Forever.
Yep.
Because especially with Chadwick Boseman's passing, it's
Yeah.
like, wow, how's this guy going to continue this? And he's doing it.
I
He's
know.
like, we're doing it anyway. We're
Yep.
not recasting.
I know.
We're going to do it.
I'm excited for it too.
I couldn't do this, so I'm going to.
Well, and they had a script written already.
Yeah, they had one.
Yep. And they had to scrap it.
Yeah, it makes me sad. I'm like, wow, Chadwick was all ready to go, and then.
But someone's got to pick up the Black Panther mantle,
I
right?
have my own theories. I've been talking to people
Shuri?
on Twitter. Yeah, Shuri's
Has to
definitely
be.
gonna- I mean,
There's a handful.
I think, yeah, there's a handful of characters that you could give it to. As far as the mantle goes, I feel like the original plan was for like Chadwick to have his original Black Panther trilogy.
Yeah.
And then he would step down, and then Shuri
Right.
would be like, all right, she's a natural
Yep.
person to come back up. Because
Yep.
that's even what happens in the comics. And I'm a
Yep.
big like comic fan too.
Yeah.
So, but now it's like, all right, you have Shuri, but then you also have, because she's more of a technological person,
Yep.
not so much of a warrior. So you could technically have two people. You could have one person actually operating as like king or queen of
Oh, sure.
Wakanda, and then you
Yep.
could have someone being the Black Panther if like Shuri doesn't necessarily want to do that
Right.
aspect.
Well, it kind of seems like Shuri's taken over, and Wakanda in general, they're taking over a little bit of like that Iron Man void
Yeah,
in there.
the tech is even like higher than Iron Man. Like he
Right.
even like was like, oh wow, I like your designs.
Right.
And started doing it himself.
Yep.
And I was like,
Yep.
cultural appropriation or appropriation, Tony. I don't know.
It's fascinating to see what they've done, but you know they just made the Captain America transition.
Yeah.
In a good way. What do you think about that? I know you watched all of it.
Yeah, I watched all of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yep.
That's the name of that.
Yep.
Yeah, loved it. Loved every part of that. I mean, I knew ever since I watched Avengers Endgame, I was like, oh man, we have Black Captain America now.
Yep.
Even before he put on the new suit, I was like, this is happening. This is going to be big.
Yeah.
I saw someone post on Instagram, I think, and they were like, we're going to have kids that grow up only knowing that Black Captain America.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that's huge.
Yep. Well, because he's probably going to be Cap for the next decade. I mean, that's what the first Cap was.
And it'll be amazing, and I'm super excited for everything. I love especially that story and how willing Marvel was to go into territory that you just wouldn't expect a Marvel thing to go into.
Yeah.
They were talking about politics and like different like things with like racial identity and the struggles that it takes for like a Black man in order to carry up a mantle that like a white guy like had before, and they didn't pull any punches with that, and I'm so glad that we got to see that story. So that's the kind of stuff I want to make when I'm at Marvel. That's what now it really feels like I can really come in there and do what I want to do, because I see people like Malcolm Spellman who like show ran that do it. So
Although speaking of that, I did kind of like the way that they started the series with, okay, it's like it's his shield, but he gave it up first.
Yeah.
And then they circled back around, and now they're fast tracking, Cap 4.
Yep. I was like, I was kind of worried, like, all right, so are we just gonna keep this a TV show? And I was like, I'm on board if we keep this a TV show,
Yeah.
but like, I heard his perspective where it was like, no, they need to treat this just as big as the previous Cap. You can't just relegate him to just television. We need to see him leading his own Avengers team. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Can we do both? And I'm hoping we can do both.
Well, they are. I mean, they're. I don't know. They haven't announced when it's coming out, but I mean, they're moving probably pretty quickly with the new Cap movie.
Yeah, the Cap movie. I'm excited for. It sounds great. I'm already writing right now. I'm writing my own screenplay version of that. I was like, all right, let me see where these characters are at, and it's kind of fun to do that because I'm writing where I feel like the character's gonna be, and I'm also getting to write what will probably never be seen on screen before, my own little version, which is kind of like fan fiction, but it feels, I don't know, for some reason it feels more legit than that. I don't know why. It's a weird
but
feeling.
you do hear you hear stories of people who write, screenplays, and then even around established property like Disney property, and it gets picked up. Now, Disney, I mean, they have such an infrastructure, who knows? But you do see it happen. Now, have you done research about all the screenwriting rules and stuff? I'll show you a book before we get done, because I've done research and said, you have to use, to turn in a script. It's got to be written, in a Courier font and in a certain way. Yeah. They have software for it, it's...
I've been coming up with, adapting my own version of that, because I looked up, all right, I want these to look professional, so I looked them up and how they normally look. And a cool thing that some Marvel directors do, they'll actually release their screenplays. And I was like, all right, I see how this kind of works.
Yeah.
And I take that and I'm like, all right, I don't like how this is structured, so I'm just going to do my own thing with it.
Oh, that's cool.
Maybe I'll have to change it back to how they want it.
I guess.
Yeah.
But you see, you can find all sorts of screenplays online.
Yeah.
Almost all of them, that get nominated for awards. You can find them online in PDF form.
Yeah, and it's really amazing to be able to just look through, this is how this person was thinking of how this...
Yeah.
And it really also gives you a lot to, think about what actors have to do with that, because I also want to act in the things that I make as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that line wasn't even in there. That actor did that himself. Huh.
Have you made short films? I mean, with you and your friends,
bits and snippets. Not with my friends so much. Okay. I'm planning on starting to do that kind of stuff. Yeah. So get prepared, guys.
I love it.
Watching, but I've been filming stuff here and there. I'm just in the editing process. I'm putting it all together and releasing it now.
I wasn't talking. I mean, goodness. I read about Steven Soderbergh, and he did the Ocean movies, and he's done tons of movies. But maybe not his last, but two of his more recent films, he shot entirely with iPhones, which is just ridiculous to me.
I mean, it's really cool that we're here at this point where we can just take whatever's in our pocket and just be like, all right, this is the future, and I love it. Now, all right, you guys need multiple cameras for this. All right, everyone take out your iPhone. We're going to get multiple perspectives right now. Download this app. It's free. You can do it. All right.
It's ridiculous. And the thing that he was saying was, he's a real big advocate of, if you want to be a filmmaker, go out and do it. Everybody has the technology now, whereas before, you needed to have the 8mm film, and I mean, I don't even know what that means, but I mean, or how to edit it. But you had to have all of that, or you had to go to film school. And yes, next year your mind is just gonna be overblown with the information that you're taking in, but because the technology is available to so many people, that's where the emphasis on being a good storyteller and just the studying that you're doing is so important.
Yeah, and it's really cool because now that everyone has technology, people are really realizing everyone has their own story to tell.
Yeah.
Everyone's realizing we have the potential to do something great, and so now we just gotta learn how to teach people how to use that potential well.
You ever thought about getting into doc filmmaking as well?
Yeah, we were thinking actually making our own documentary about our bear stuff.
Oh yeah.
But we can still always do it. Yeah. But hey, it'd be pretty cool. We could even do some Sakura stuff. Film some Sakura meetings.
Let's touch base on this. Yeah. We're gonna sidebar after this. We're gonna brainstorm a little bit. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm actually doing some stuff with Community Academy and learning about because we want to make a documentary about what they're doing too.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of stuff.
You see a lot of major filmmakers. They like to dabble in doc work as well. Like especially this last year in COVID, when nobody could shoot scripted stuff.
Yeah.
They all dove into documentary work.
And that's also like really how you learn about like what's real here now.
Yeah.
Like really, you know, the Nomadland film that won like Best Picture at the Oscars, like that's kind of like a documentary because they have like, that's a real story, real people that are in that. Like the main person's like an actor, but like.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't either. Like I'm just going off the things that I've read about.
It's on Hulu,
wow.
I know, but I haven't spent the time. Ava DuVernay's 13th, I actually revisited that one recently.
We presented that at a couple, like at a soccer meeting once, and we talked about that. Yeah.
I'd watched it, years ago, like when it first came out, because it was, I think partially funded through Netflix, so it was available right away that way. And then I revisited it fairly recently for inspiration on a project that I was working on. It just blew my mind. And she's, the type of caliber filmmaker. I mean, she's A-list filmmaker, but there's a lot of filmmakers like that are going to documentary work. Well, we could go on and on. In fact, we might after this, so I don't know. But Vijay, thank you for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. Man, this was a treat for me.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, enjoy your last couple weeks of walking the halls of Ames High, and good luck to you this summer and next year. And I have a feeling that we're going to stay connected.
Yeah.
All right, so thanks again.
Yeah. All right.